Piedmont. Nuga Radio. Roar into Talladega.
Nuga Radio.
92.7. Your NASCAR racing station. Nuga Radio 92.7 FM.
Nuga Radio 92.7.
Hello, the NFL, the helmet rules have been changed in the NFL. This is big news because it's going to change the way that football looks going on into the future. And I think this is important for fans to realize because we're going to see a lot of calls made that we don't recognize, that we don't necessarily know what's going on, right? And I've seen this happen in other sports where a lot of the calls feel petty and there's nothing you can do about it as a fan as you're watching. So the helmet rule in the NFL previously was a crown of the helmet rule, the very top of the helmet. You are not allowed to lead as a player. And usually this tends to apply more to defensive players more so than offensive players. But you are not allowed to lead as a player with the crown of your helmet because we're focused on player safety, and that is endangering to not only yourself, but obviously to the player that you would be hitting with the crown of your helmet. The NFL has made a very big show of cracking down on this, and rightfully so. It's a big deal, and so we've gotten used to it. I mean, I remember when they made that rule initially, and there were a lot of fans that came out and they were talking about, well, this is the sissification of the league. This is the wussification of the NFL, when really all the league was trying to do was make players safer, if not for the sole reason that it was a public relations nightmare that the NFL has a bunch of players who are dying from constant hits to the head. So this rule eventually got accepted, but the NFL is upping the ante on this helmet rule. They are simplifying the rule in a way that's very similar to how they simplified the catch rule to go ahead and explain how all that's done. There's too many parts of the catch rule, and now a catch is, as we used to know it, a catch again. Here in the NFL is saying that if you are a player and you make helmet-to-helmet contact on any play in any way, you could possibly be suspended and ejected from the game that you're playing in, which is crazy. It's crazy that you could possibly wind up being suspended and ejected, especially the ejection, because if you are a quarterback and you try and get low for a quarterback sneak and you initiate contact with your helmet, which is what frequently happens on those plays, do you get ejected from the game? Really? You're going to eject Tom Brady on the 1-yard line for initiating helmet contact on a quarterback sneak? What about offensive and defensive linemen? Offensive linemen and defensive linemen make helmet-to-helmet contact all the time. Former NFL head of NFL, like the referee supervising, and he was also an umpire in the league for a very long time, Jan DePolis, he had something to say about this.
I have no idea how they're going to police this situation. You know, this is football so different than we've learned this game over the years. This is just going to change the whole landscape of watching and playing football. You know, I understand the NFL's concern with helmet-to-helmet contact, helmet injuries, targeting, leading with a crown. But gosh, guys, you know, my first thought as being an old umpire is the action in the interior line. Mm-hmm. Those guys just, you know, they butt heads like a couple of rams. A running back coming through the middle. And now they're saying that, you know, besides a penalty, the possibility of ejection, you know, you're going to have to go to 100 player squads. I don't know I don't know how they're going to do it. I don't know how they're going to make the decision. I applaud them for doing this. I just not sure if they really thought this through all the way. There's some thought about, hey,
he's not sure if they thought this through all the way. And that's really the big deal there, because the NFL is going to be doing some coaching with their officials starting next month to explain what this looks like, to explain what is a foul on these plays and what is not a foul on these plays. And they're very hopeful because they have a lot of clear-cut examples of what this is. But the problem with a lot of these rules is not what is clear-cut and what is obvious. A lot of this comes down to what isn't all that obvious, where it gets to be a little bit more vague, where there's a lot of gray area in terms of players who are making contact with their helmets. And I don't know if the NFL has considered the level of gray area that's going to be here. Jim DePolis, a man who has been an NFL official for years and years and years, is saying this is going to change the way that football works going into the future. And I don't know if anybody is ready for it. I'm actually shocked this story is not a bigger story going to the NFL season. Jim DePolis said this back in March, but the rule got passed today, and it's going into effect very shortly. And yeah, we're going to see how this is going to change the NFL, because we do teach running backs to get low and ride behind their pads. But if you get low and ride behind your pads, what you're essentially saying is put your head low. I mean, you're behind your head. You're going to make contact with your head. Is that going to be, and also running backs lower their heads to avoid contact, or to at least protect themselves from contact that they know is coming. At some point, you're going to wind up in several gray areas that are going to lead to officiating calls that I think are going to put officials in a really bad spot going forward, because they have to make these calls and figure out who's going to get ejected, and someone is going to get ejected in an NFC championship game. Someone's going to get ejected in the wild card round of the playoffs in a big moment, in a key situation, and then everyone will turn on this rule. And I'm saying, figure out right now, how far does this rule actually take us? I don't know. I don't think the league knows, and that is my biggest problem with this rule, is that it doesn't appear to be clear where the line of demarcation is as to when you are committing a foul and when you are not, because a lot of this stuff comes down to intent. And if it comes down to intent, how do you judge what a guy meant to do in a sport that's moving 1,000,000 miles an hour? It's too much to ask of any officiating crew. And I know you're going to have the guys in New York who are going to be reviewing this stuff all the time, and maybe that takes some pressure off of the guys on the field doing this in real time. But let's be honest, there's going to be some calls that the guys on the field have to make in real time. And how can they possibly know? How could they possibly know? That's all I'm saying. And the league needs to address this before the season starts, because leaving the judgment call up to the officials is clearly a difficult thing to do. We saw this with the catch rule. And when the catch rule had moments where we thought we saw a catch, but per the rules was not a catch, you put the officials in a bad spot because they're only calling what the rule book says to call. But if the rules are stupid, that doesn't help anybody. Like, now is the time to try and figure this stuff out. Someone is going to get worked over in a playoff game. Someone is going to be trying to run the table to make it into the playoffs, and they're going to get worked over by one of these calls. A key player on their team is going to wind up ejected from the game, and I'm telling you, then is not the time to be outraged. Now is the time. And I know the NFL has figured out, well, these are the obvious plays, but we didn't have a problem. Let me take it back to the catch rule, because that was the most recent one. There are things that were a catch that got ruled a catch, that were very obviously a catch. We didn't have a problem with those. It was the stuff that was on the line per the rules, where a guy was ruled not having caught the ball, and then in a similar situation later in the year, he didn't catch it. It didn't make any sense. It wasn't consistent. And I see in this rule a number of consistency problems, a number of issues where things could get to be wildly inconsistent moving forward. You're listening to all new Nuga Radio, NugaRadio.com, here on 92.7 FM. Clutch with Keon Rose. Thank you for joining me today. So last night, the NBA gave out their awards, and I don't like the way the NBA is doing this, giving out the awards all the way at the end of the season, so far after the playoffs are over. They used to give out these awards during the season, and I liked it because I liked the idea that you could be a guy in the playoffs and then win the MVP and be in front of your home crowd, in front of your home fans, and hold up that award. I always liked that. I thought that was very cool. But I understand that the league wants to turn this into a show, into a performance. That's where sports is going. We've seen the NFL do it. We see the NFL move the draft around. So we're doing this more as a performance, as a gigantic award ceremony that looks more like the Oscars and the Emmys. So that's fine. That's really not the big issue. But I'm not going to lie, putting it so far after the playoffs are done, I forgot about the awards, especially since we know who's going to win the awards anyway. Like, we knew James Harden was going to be the MVP. We knew Victor Oladipo was going to be most improved player. We knew Dwayne Casey was going to be coach of the year. So we had all this stuff leaked out anyway. There was no drama to the awards. And then on top of that, it's so far removed from the NBA season, I forgot. It's after the draft? How are you going to have an award ceremony about last regular season? Because these are all regular season awards. How are you going to have an award ceremony about last regular season after the draft? The offseason has started. Nobody cares. Like the NFL award show, say what you want about it and whether or not you like it. The NFL award show happens the week before the Super Bowl. It happens before the championship games start. So you're still at the height of I care about football before they go out and give you these awards. And so, yeah, you get into it. You watch it. I didn't even know it was on last night. I didn't watch it. I had to find out this morning, and I got a bunch of YouTube clip updates from it. So I ended up watching a lot of it just via YouTube, to be honest with you. What are we doing with this? Why is this so far after the season? Literally, no one cares at this point. We're all worried about, well, where's LeBron going to go? Paul George? Are the Lakers going to get fixed? We're worried about 100 other things other than who is going to win NBA MVP from last season. You got to be kidding me with how late this award ceremony is. Absolutely ridiculous. But what I want to say is that James Harden won the MVP of the league, and I understand why you'd give it to Harden. I do. James Harden had statistically his best year. James Harden had a monstrous year. In terms of field goal percentage, he shot 44%. Three-point percentage, he was 33%. He averaged 21 points a game. I mean, it's a great year for James Harden. Where I get a little confused by this is how come LeBron didn't win the award. And by the way, there's a group of people who believes that every year LeBron should win the MVP. And I'm actually not one of those people. Steph Curry, the 2 years that he won it, I thought Steph Curry was in real time transforming the league. He should have been MVP. The year that Kevin Durant won it, Kevin Durant was putting up numbers that we hadn't seen since Michael Jordan. He should have been MVP, and he did it without Westbrook. Westbrook was injured that season. The year that Derrick Rose won it, I thought Derrick Rose, isolated on a team that was built around him, did a great job of throwing a team on his back and carrying him to the playoffs. That really, without him, can't go. Can't go. And that year, LeBron was in Miami, and the MVP award to me is looked like Derrick Rose showed his value as the MVP of the Chicago Bulls in 2010. So I have no problem with Derrick Rose winning it, Durant winning it, and Curry winning it the 2 years that he won it. And I actually don't even have a problem with Westbrook winning it the year that he won it over LeBron. I just thought there were other players that were more qualified than Westbrook. I thought Harden should have won it that year. Harden winning it this year is problematic for me because this is LeBron James's most complete season as a player. This is his best year as an NBA player in terms of percentages. He hasn't peaked out at all of those, but these are in the top three of every statistical category that he's ever been in, both in shooting percentage, three-point percentage, in terms of points scored, points per game. LeBron James, and he did it with J.R. Smith, with a bunch of humps, with J.R. Smith, who doesn't know what the score is at the end of a game. He does it with a bunch of guys like Jordan Clarkson, who, since he's been at least in Cleveland, hasn't been any good. I mean, he did it with a bunch. They traded away half the team at the trade deadline. He did it with nobody. He did it with no help. Like, if you can't say that that has not shown the absolute value of LeBron James, then you never will see his value. You will never see it, because this year has been the year. Like the other years that he lost it to guys, I thought those guys were truly deserving. James Harden is deserving in as much as he is in the conversation for best player in the league. But what makes this interesting to me is that James Harden is a player who plays in a very specific system, right? He plays in that Morey Ball, Mike D'Antoni system. And in that system, there are only two shots that matter: attacking the basket to get a layup or a dunk, or shooting a three. If you attack the basket to get a layup and a dunk, you will probably be fouled, and so you will get to shoot free throws as a result of that. And James Harden excelled at this. This is where James Harden scored a lot of his points. This is where James Harden did a lot of his damage, is getting to the basket, scoring around the basket, and shooting threes. LeBron James played James Harden's game better than James Harden. And that's why LeBron should be the MVP. I mean, you just look at 2-point field goal percentage, LeBron versus Harden. LeBron shooting 50%, Harden shoots 44%. You look at 3-point shooting percentage, which this is the meat and potatoes of James Harden's game. The meat and potatoes of it. James Harden shoots 33% from three, which is good, respectable. LeBron James shoots 41% from three, which is not just good. That's alarmingly great. That's putting LeBron James in great three-point shooter territory. And we've never known LeBron to really be that player. He has expanded his game entirely. And so LeBron James statistically played better this season than James Harden. Statistically, he played James Harden's game better than James Harden. And not just statistically, because I don't think this stuff comes down to just numbers. I think you've got to pass the eye test too. LeBron James was clearly the most dominant player. Even clearly head and shoulders above everybody else. Every single night, LeBron James was making a play that would make your eyeballs pop out of your head. I've never seen that. And on top of it, too, he played all 82 games, which that's been, to me, at least one of the arguments for why he should not have won it the year that Westbrook won it. The year that Westbrook won it, LeBron James missed a bunch of games. He rested a ton. He's never injured, but he rested a bunch. This year, the rest wasn't there. This year, he played all 82 games. James Harden didn't play all 82 games, but he did. And if that's going to be the case, if he's going to play the entire season, if he's going to put up better numbers, if he's going to look more dominant doing it, if he's going to carry a bunch of guys to the playoffs and through the playoffs, then you've got to go ahead and give him that award. And also, should the NBA awards include the postseason at this point? If you're going to have the award show this far after the whole season, why not include the postseason in your recognition as well? And if you do that, well, then you only tip the scales further in favor of LeBron James. And I suppose if you throw in the postseason, nobody else wins the award because LeBron puts up postseason numbers better than anybody we've seen in a very, very long time. I just don't know how you make that thing more interesting. But giving the MVP award to a guy who's clearly not the best player in the game, that doesn't make this more interesting. Now, what does make it more interesting is Bill Russell. Did you see Bill Russell last night? Charles Barkley was thanking a lot of the legends that played the game before him. He was thanking Kareem, and he was thanking Oscar Robertson. And then when he turned to thank Bill Russell, and Bill Russell gave Sir Charles the bird. He gave him the bird in the process of thanking him. It's not like Charles was being sarcastic or disingenuous, which he can be. No, Charles Barkley was in the process of thanking Bill Russell for all that he's done for laying down a foundation of the game. And Bill Russell on live TV gave Charles Barkley the bird. And if that doesn't make this interesting, nothing else will. But that was the most interesting moment because none of the other stuff was interesting at all. in any particular kind of way. I mean, none of the awards that were won surprised anybody, right? Like Rudy Gobert won. Okay. Right. Well, we expected that, you know? Okay. Well, James Harden's the MVP. Well, we've been talking about this for months and how basically the votes were in and he would be the MVP. All right. Like nothing was really surprising about it at all. But the idea that Bill Russell could give Sir Charles the bird, that is some highly, highly, highly entertaining stuff. I don't usually pay very much attention to the NFL top 100 players list. I think that it is a glorified popularity contest, but I also think it's fascinating from the result or from the aspect that players are talking about.
Traffic, news, and information. Nuga Radio. Digital FM 95.3 HD4 and 92.7 FM.
3, 2, 1.
Chatta, Nuga Radio. Digital FM 95.3 HD4, 92.7 FM's news now.
In Oak Ridge, police say a woman in a wheelchair was carjacked. It happened Saturday in a parking lot. Carjacker crashed the car at an intersection, had to be taken to the hospital. His identity and condition are not disclosed by authorities. Criminal charges are reportedly pending. A Lafayette woman issued an apology after she was accused of stealing from a charity jar at a MAPCO. Shannon Barrett turned herself in after her face was plastered all over TV and social media. She didn't remember stealing the money from the donation jar because she was intoxicated at the time. And a man who previously served a 186-month federal prison sentence on a drug conviction was reportedly caught again, this time transporting 8 ounces of meth. Kenneth Cowboy Schwartz told DEA agents after his arrest on Friday that he has been selling drugs all of his life. Val St. John for Nuga Radio, News Talk 92.7, Action News Now.
Chattanooga Morning News with Russ and Val. Weekdays from 6 to 9 a.m. on Nuga Radio, 92.7 FM.
Chattanooga weather.
Any isolated showers quickly diminishing through your nighttime. Warm, muggy overnight. Lows into the lower 70s. For Wednesday, scattered afternoon showers and storms more likely. Some of those could be quite strong. Highs 88 to 90. Only isolated afternoon storms Thursday. Hot highs 90 to 92. For lunch or dinner, come to Guthrie's, home of the original golden fried delicious chicken finger with their special world famous sauce. Open daily. Locations in Trenton, Signal Mountain, and Ringgold. Go get Guthrie's. It's always good. And I'm Source E12 Chief Meteorologist Patrick Moore.
Nuga Radio 92.7.
I got my business up and running and it's already expanding. I got lucky. Lucky because I found Signal Voice and Data. Signal Voice and Data can incorporate all of my business information sharing and communications seamlessly, keep my costs down, and let me work more productively with endless connectivity no matter where I might be. That's called working smart, not hard. Go to signalvoicetn.com and bring the future of communication to your business today. signalvoicetn.com.
Hey, dude, check this out. Have you ever seen one so big?
Whoa, look at the size of that.
Look at this little itty-bitty one.
Wow, that's really small.
They have them big, small, and everything in between. You'll always find the biggest variety of knives at the knife shop at Frost Cutlery in Ottawa. We're talking about over 40 brands of knives, including Benchmade, WR Case & Sons, Booker, and all the Frost Cutlery brands. Now, Sam, you've been to the cutlery shop. Is it amazing?
Spectacular. The knife shop at Frost Cutlery in Ottawa. They have knives, swords, kitchen knives, ammo, and reloading supplies, plus survival gear.
It's the knife shop at Frost Cutlery, open 7 days a week. Hey, girls, you're going to love this. We're going to the knife shop.
Hey, let's not tell them they have ammo and loading supplies.
The knife shop at Frost Cutlery opens 7 days a week. You'll always find the biggest variety of knives. You're going to love the knife shop at Frost Cutlery in Ottawa. The knife shop.
And tell them David Toulis sent you.
Do you hear that? That, my friend, is not what you're thinking. That is the new 2018 Indian Chieftain Dark Horse. Yeah, Indian. Indian motorcycle is more than a bike. It's an experience, an American icon, and Indian Motorcycle of Chattanooga is the only place you'll find their new 2018 line. Are you ready to ride? Join the club. Go to Indian Motorcycle of Chattanooga. Just look for the sign, 153 and Amnicola. Indian Motorcycle, the true American original.
Hey, Karen, you need me for that 1 o'clock?
Yes, Cheese, please. Karen, did you get the quarterlies done? Yep, they're filed in the Cabernet cabinet.
Karen, can you describe the initiatives to the new hire? Thanks.
Oh, sure. Full-bodied, some floral notes, maybe a hint of dark chocolate.
Am I in the right department?
Got wine on the mind? Come unwind at Virgola. Italian wine, oysters, caviar, cheeses, and more. Perfect after work or a romantic date night. Virgola Italian Wine Bar, 608 Georgia Avenue.
Chattanooga Paint and Decorating would like to remind you it's so hot out there. And guess what? Your deck is taking a beating. It's probably starting to show wear. If you're hosting friends for the 4th, get your deck entertainment ready with a fresh coat of stain and protect it from heat, sun, and rain with a quality sealant. If you want to get to work, Chattanooga Paint and Decorating want to help you. For exterior paint, stains, sealants, and supplies, stop by Chattanooga Paint and Decorating today on Hicks and Pike across from Valvoline or online at ChattanoogaPaint.com.
Nuga Radio. Are you brain dead? Still voting for pathetic liberals? Take 3 hours of Sean Hannity from 3 to 6.
Nuga Radio.
Then call us in the morning between 9 and 11.
92.7
Nuga Radio.
Was ranked very highly on the top 100 players in the NFL on that list. And I was a little surprised that he was ranked as high as he was ranked. I was, not even going to lie to you. And here's why. Julio didn't have a good season by Julio Jones standards. Okay, he still caught like 1,400 yards. He's still one of the top end receivers in the NFL. But by Julio Jones standards, Julio Jones did not have a good year, and therefore I did not expect him to wind up at 4th on the top 100 players list, even if it's a popularity contest and Julio Jones, like, just going on the wow factor of anything that he does on a football field. Even just going on that, he's still unbelievably great. It's just his numbers seem to decline quite a bit. And there's a lot of explanations for that. But Julio, 2015 was his best season, right? This season, the 2017 season, this past season, Julio Jones, catch percentage was the lowest he's ever had since his second year. Receptions per game, the lowest he's had since his second year. Yards per game, the lowest he's had since his second year. Touchdowns, he only had 3 touchdowns, and that's the fewest touchdowns he's ever caught since 2013, which he played 5 games because he was injured for most of the season. And he caught 2 touchdown passes then, so he caught 66% of the touchdowns that he caught this season in the season he played 5 games. That's crazy. That's absolutely crazy. Like, these are declining numbers. And Julio Jones still was a great player. Like, I can understand why players think very highly of him. Again, I think the eye test matters. I love stats. I am a gigantic nerd. The reason why I don't drown you in a river of numbers is because I believe that numbers have to go together with what you are seeing with your own eyes. We need to put things in context. Numbers help you put things in context, but don't just disbelieve your eyes and pay attention to stats. You've got to look at what's going on and go, okay, in the context of what is happening, this is what this means. And so Julio Jones having down numbers is still Julio Jones having a really good season. just by Julio Jones's own ridiculous standards, they're not up to par. And just looking at his numbers over the years, they do appear to be declining. Now, part of this has to do with the fact that Julio's starting to get to that point where he's got a lot of wear and tear on his body as a wide receiver that moves incredibly fast and is incredibly powerful in that way. But part of this also has to do with the fact that since Kyle Shanahan left, Julio's numbers haven't been the same. That 2015 year was the first year of Kyle Shanahan. That next year was a great Shanahan year where Matt Ryan was starting to get the feel of the offense, and everybody got it, and it just clicked, and they went to the Super Bowl where they lost. But what ended up being insane to me was just how dominant Julio was in that 2-year stretch. Steve Sarkisian is now the offensive coordinator of the Atlanta Falcons, and I don't think he's using Julio properly or using him well. And I believe this from just what I saw of Julio Jones in the playoffs last year, where Julio wasn't targeted very much. The Eagles were taking Julio out of the game. But Julio Jones is not exactly the kind of receiver you simply take out of a game. Julio Jones is a guy that I've seen catch passes in double coverage and triple coverage and make people look silly, that if he has even the smallest window, he can dominate. And the year before, the Falcons were in the Super Bowl playing the New England Patriots, and the Patriots, one of the great defenses of all time, with Bill Belichick, one of the great defensive minds of all time, tried to take Julio Jones out of the game and couldn't take him out of the game. So you're playing the Philadelphia Eagles, who last year defensively they were great, but they weren't the Patriots from that Super Bowl year for them. And you're telling me that the Eagles just took Julio Jones out of the game entirely? That's the problem. Steve Sarkisian's play calling and his decision making at that position, that is a gigantic problem. And the Falcons have doubled down on rolling with Steve Sarkisian. They're going to continue to be with him. Fine. But Sarkisian's got to figure out how to get Julio Jones involved in an offense, because 3 touchdown receptions in one season for a guy that every single player in the league believes this guy is the second best wide receiver in football after Antonio Brown. If that's going to be the player that you have, and not only do players believe it and fans believe it, coaches believe it. If this is the player that you have to find a way to get him more involved in the offense. You have to find a way. I don't care what you have to do. Come hell or high water, you have to find a way to get that guy off in games. Otherwise, you're just wasting his superior talent and athleticism. This is a guy that takes over football games. You can't stop Julio Jones when he's going. Well, I've seen Matt Ryan make bad throws to Julio Jones that we don't criticize Matt Ryan for because Julio Jones caught the pass. There was a play last year. They were playing the Saints. And Matt Ryan throws a pass to the front of the end zone. And the Saints player, and it might have been Marshawn Lattimore, the corner, the rookie corner, and Marshawn Lattimore is great. But Matt Ryan underthrows this ball. And Marshawn Lattimore takes it. He has it for about half a second. And Julio Jones reaches over the top of him and just yanks it from his hands. Touchdown Falcons. And we don't end up criticizing Matt Ryan for an interception that clearly should have happened because Julio Jones is such a dominant wide receiver that he negates that. He just completely wipes it out. And I cannot figure out how it is that Steve Sarkisian has managed to bumble and bungle the idea of getting Julio Jones more involved in football games. You have a guy that can take over games. You have to give him the ability to take over games. This is the weakness of the wide receiver position, which is that they need help to take over. They don't start the play with the ball in their hands. You don't say that LeBron needs help to take over a game. He just takes it over. You don't say that Harden needs help to take over a game. He just takes it over. In the NFL, the quarterback's got to get the ball in the hands of the receiver if the receiver is the best player on the team. And it's not even close. Julio Jones is the best player on the team. Got to get it in his hands. And it's a big failing on Steve Sarkisian's part that he hasn't been able to get the ball into the hands of Julio Jones. You're listening to All New Nuga Radio, NugaRadio.com here on 92.7 FM. Again, I try not to take the top 100 players list in the NFL as gospel because these are just players voting for the players in the league that they like. And it ends up becoming a popularity contest like any all-star game in sports. It's a popularity contest. The players do have some very specific insights about things that they like about certain guys, but overwhelmingly, they're still going to choose the guys that have a reputation, the guys that have been in the league a very long time. This is how J.J. Watt found himself, I think, 2 years ago on the top 100 players list, even though he didn't play a game the year before. I think he played 3 games the year before he hurt his back and couldn't finish the season. It's not fair, it's not right, but it happens. But still, J.J. Watt's a guy with a lot of clout in the league. J.J. Watt's a guy with a lot of history in the league. And so I can understand how you could put J.J. Watt on that list just from the sole aspect of J.J. Watt has been here for so long. He is a staple in defensive football. But Jimmy Garoppolo came in at number 90. Jimmy Garoppolo is apparently one of the 100 best players according to players in the NFL. And this is why you have to take what players say with a grain of salt. Just because they've played the game doesn't mean that they know what they're talking about. Okay? Jimmy Garoppolo he played a grand total last year of 6 games. He made 5 starts. Okay, 5 of those were starts. He played in 6 total games. He is in his career 7-0 as a starter. So Jimmy Garoppolo in his career hasn't started half a season's worth of games. How is it possible that he's one of the 100 best players in the entire NFL? Jimmy Garoppolo last year, touchdown to interception ratio of 7-5. 7 touchdowns, 5 picks. Yes, Jimmy Garoppolo has got a lot of potential. Yes, he looks the part of an NFL quarterback. Yes, he must have learned a lot from Tom Brady because he was Brady's backup. And yes, he's a very accurate quarterback. He's completed 67.4% of his passes. But he's not one of the 100 best players in the league. Are you out of your mind? Jimmy Garoppolo? He's only played 6 games. He's only started 5. You can't be one of the 100 best players through 16 weeks of football if you've only played 5. And look, again, injured players have made the list before, but injured players have been able to have a pedigree, a legacy. So a lot of it is we're giving you a legacy vote, which I'm okay with players doing that because that makes sense. You vote in who you know. Jimmy Garoppolo has been in the league 3 years. Prior to last season, he'd only played 2 games. So Jimmy Garoppolo can't be one of the 100 best players in the league, and Jimmy Garoppolo doesn't even have the clout to be one of the 100 best players in the league. I mean, it's insane. It's absolutely insane. Right? Like Jimmy Garoppolo played well in the 5 games that he played, but I'm telling you, you couldn't find one person who played more games and had value to make that list. And also, man, how do you feel if you're like the 9 other guys that Jimmy Garoppolo came in on that list in front of? Like, really, the everybody else in the NFL, my peers thought this guy that started 5 games was better than me? No, that can't be right. That cannot possibly be right. Jimmy Garoppolo. Carson Wentz finished in the top 10. And I think that that's fair. Carson Wentz didn't finish the season, but Carson Wentz played 13 games, which is most of the season. And Carson Wentz had incredible value because the Eagles had pretty much locked up the playoff spot that they got, that they wound up winning the Super Bowl eventually, even though they won the Super Bowl without Carson Wentz. They got to the playoffs because of Carson Wentz. He played 13 games. He threw 33 touchdowns and only 7 interceptions in that time span. And Jalen Ramsey, the corner for the Jacksonville Jaguars, he came out and said it. Jimmy Garoppolo shouldn't be on this list. And I'm glad it's obvious to Jalen Ramsey. Why isn't it obvious to the rest of the league? Who voted Jimmy Garoppolo that high? Do quarterback votes count more? Look, I know we're in love with quarterbacks because they control the game. They've got the ball in their hands, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But you have to draw a line somewhere and say that a guy who didn't even play half the season and in his career hasn't even played half a season, that guy cannot be one of the top 100 players in this league. There are too many great players in the game of football for Jimmy Garoppolo to somehow be on that list with the limited amount of action that he has actually played. One day, Jimmy Garoppolo will dominate this list. I do believe that. He's that good. But not yet. What's the rush? You're listening to all new Nuga Radio, NugaRadio.com, 92.7 FM. So I was talking about it during the break. The fiscally responsible club of which I like to believe that I am. The very first car that I had control over what the car was, I went out and got a Honda Civic because I couldn't get past the miles per gallon. I looked at the miles per gallon and I was like, that is a very attractive thing to see in a car. Sure, the car could look better. You know, I mean, it's a very vague brown Honda Civic. It's very unassuming, which I think is also nice because very, very often I can get away with a little bit of speed. The police don't really target me out. You drive your bright red Corvettes. You drive your bright yellow Mustangs. The police don't see me. I drive a brown Honda Civic. They don't see me at all. And Kirk Cousins agrees. Kirk Cousins, the man who has signed an $84 million guaranteed contract, has been seen driving an ugly old van. An ugly old van. He could go out there and get a sports car. He could go out there and get some kind of luxury car. But he went out and bought an ugly old van from his grandparents because this is the smart way to live life. Don't waste your money. Don't throw your money in about 1,000 different directions. No, go out there and get an ugly van. Get yourself an ugly van. Look, and he said that it had more to do with sentimental reasons than financial reasons. Sure, whatever. I'm just saying, because Kirk Cousins went out and got himself an ugly van, and a used ugly van at that, he is going to have money long after he's done playing football. We've seen the stories about guys who end up going broke. We see the stories about guys who do not get to the middle of their life after playing football with the money that they made playing football. And it winds up being silly and it winds up being horrendous. Sometimes it's stupid. Sometimes it's tragic, depending on how the story's gone. I mean, Bernie Kosar's story is probably the most tragic. His father, he gave all of his money to his dad to manage the money, and then his dad mismanaged the money, and Bernie Kosar didn't have any of the money left from his playing days. And that to me, that is to me very sad. I mean, that shouldn't happen to anybody, especially when you trust family with it. But when you look at a guy like Kirk Cousins, hey, that to me is the smart way to go. Look, there'll be plenty of time to drive sports cars later when you've invested the money and you get wonderful, sufficient financial returns. There's no reason to rush this thing. And what ended up happening, of course, was that, yeah, most guys end up trying to rush this thing. Most guys end up trying to go out there and get the nicest car. They try and get the nicest thing. And I don't personally don't get it. And I practice what I preach because I drive an old Honda Civic. And if I had more money, would I drive an ugly brown Honda Civic? Maybe not, but I'm not driving a fancy car either. I like being under the radar from the police, and I particularly enjoy being making a ton of money at the pump. I save so much money. You have no idea. You have no idea. And the car is great because the car keeps track of the miles per gallon on the dash. It's fantastic. So you feel good. You feel good while you're driving the car. You can visibly see the amount of money that you are saving while you drive a car, right? I remember Alfred Morris when he first came into the league. He's another one of those guys. Drove his car. It was an old Mazda car that was falling apart. He nicknamed the car Bentley, and that was as close to a Bentley as Alfred Morris was going to get. And Alfred Morris had a great rookie season and then hasn't had the same football success since. And Alfred Morris might not be in the league that much longer, but he saved so much money by virtue of not going out there and getting the fanciest and the flashiest car available and imaginable to him. I mean, that it's completely perfect. You're listening to all new Nuga Radio and NugaRadio.com here on 92.7 FM. So one of the things that we have forgotten about this NBA offseason is Paul George. Paul George is going to be a free agent, and we are concerned with LeBron James, who has not opted out of his contract. He has to decide whether or not to opt out with the Cavs on Friday. We are concerned with LeBron James, who has not opted out and is therefore not a free agent yet. And we are concerned with Kawhi Leonard, who will not be a free agent for another year. And we have completely forgotten about one Paul George, who is still a very good football player, didn't have a good season last year, played poorly. I think a lot of that is playing alongside Westbrook will do that to you. I think that Russell Westbrook is a ball hog, and I think that when he does pass the ball to his teammates, he's hunting for assists, and I don't like it. I don't think it's a good way to play the game of basketball. But I do say this. I think that Paul George is a guy that's a lot that got worked over a lot in Indiana, because that team in Indiana was good. That team in Indiana was very good. And Paul George is still mad at the Pacers, allegedly, for not doing enough to keep Lance Stevenson. Lance Stevenson's a guy who is foolish. He's a clown. We know that. But Lance Stevenson's also a guy that was a really good player for them in the squad that was assembled at that time. And you don't break that apart when you have it in the NBA, because it's so hard to get that right chemistry where you even have a guy like Lance Stevenson, who's a good player, not a great player, but played really well inside of the structure that they had. And the Pacers didn't do enough to keep Lance Stevenson. And you can make the very strong case and argument that that was the moment that they lost Paul George. They lost him right there and then, when they didn't do enough to keep Lance Stevenson on the team. And I'm interested in seeing
Traffic, news, and information. Nuga Radio. Digital FM 95.3 HD4 and 92.7 FM.
3, 2, 1.
Chatter, Nuga Radio. Digital FM 95.3 HD4, 92.7 FM's news now.
Tornado touchdown in Lafayette. The National Weather Service confirmed an EF0 tornado touchdown in Lafayette, Georgia, reaching speeds of 80 miles per hour, causing destruction and power outages. Defense attorneys for the 54 defendants who were rounded